Okay, so in this video, we're gonna look at the algorithm for finding the biggest number in the list. So what you need when you want to find the biggest number in the list, there are three things you need. You need a for loop, a conditional statement, and a control variable. So whenever you're looking for the biggest number in the list, we assume you have a list, so something like this. So you need to loop over that list. You need to have a conditional statement that's checking whether the current number is the biggest number, and then you need a control variable that stores the highest number. And then while you're at the end of that loop, when the loop is done, you should have the highest variable in your control number. So what we need to do is something like the following. So I'm going to run this code here. So what I have here is I have a list of scores. Okay, so this is a list. So what I want in the score, I want to find the highest score in this list. So obviously looking at this, we can see the highest number in the list is 87. So easy for us as people to see that. But when we write code, this list might be much longer, and it might be much harder to see that. So this is when we want to write this argument. So what we said when we find the biggest, we need a loop first of all. So I'm going to use a for loop here. And then I'm going to have var I equals 0. And then I say I is less than scores dot length. So I'm looping through all of this, I plus plus. So I'm looping through this list of numbers. So let's see. So I want to say here score. So I'm going to do a const score here. So I'm going to say, okay, this is the current score. So I say scores here. So I'm going to do I here. So what I'll do for now, console.log, we're going to do score. Okay, so we're just going to loop through all the numbers in the list, and let's print that on the screen. Var, oh, there was a big problem there. Okay, let's run this, execute the score. Okay, so looking at this, 56, 73, 70. Okay, so you see that's all the numbers. So we're looping through all of those, okay, and we're printing them to the screen. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to check. Okay, we need a control variable now. Okay, then I'm going to call here, we'll use let. Okay, I'll call this biggest. Okay, currently biggest is 0. So what I want to check now is I want to check, okay, so instead of printing this out, okay, I am going to do the following. So I'm going to say, okay, so I'm going to say if, okay, so I want to say if score is bigger than biggest, okay. So when I'm doing this, so whenever the score is bigger than biggest, I want to say, so in this case, I want to change my control variable biggest to be equal to the score, because at this point in time, score will be bigger than biggest. So biggest should become equal to score. Okay. So what I'm doing here is I'm check if the current number is bigger than, if the current number, which is score, okay, the current number score is bigger than biggest, okay. So then what we're saying is that assign the current score to biggest, okay. So we're assigning these two to each other, okay. So now if all went well, and I print out biggest, so let's see console.log biggest. Biggest should now be equal to the biggest number in the list, which should be 87. So let's see, we run that, so it's 87. So if I take 87 out of the list, the number should be what? The number should be 73, which it is. If I put 87 back, there we go, it's 87. So if I add another few numbers here, so I add 89, so now it will be 89. So if I add a few numbers here, so I add 81 here, I add another number here, which is 109, and then I have another number here that is 501. So we run that. So you can see that our algorithm can consistently find the biggest number, okay? So obviously I could have done this now in a function because I didn't do this in a function so far. So what I can do is I can create a function and I can call this find biggest, okay? And then I can do something like this, find biggest. So I put all of this in the function. Normally in the function, I want to indent things a little bit to make it easier to read. So I just indent this, the same thing as before. So now I've got biggest there. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a variable here, which is scores, which I'm passing in. So I'm going to cut this here. So I'll do this. Okay, so do Control V. I'm going to rename this one numbers. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is find biggest, and then I'm going to pass in numbers. Okay, and I'm going to run that. Oops, I get undefined, and that is because you'll see in my function, I never returned biggest from the function. Okay, so you see find biggest. So just the code we had before, we loop through this. And then at the end, let's see, we execute, and there we go, 501. So if I change this to have other numbers, I can have 5907, I can have 6011, and I will have 431. So if you see, if I run this code, it'll always find the biggest number. If I remove that biggest number, it will find the next biggest number. So my algorithm is quite robust. So just to recap, to find the biggest number in the list, you need a for loop, a conditional statement, and a control variable. The control variable needs to be defined outside of the loop because we need to remember it. Okay, so we want to say here, define a control variable outside of the loop. Okay, and then what we want here is we want to check if the current number is bigger than biggest. Biggest is our control variable. If it is, we make biggest equal to score, and we keep on looping. And every time we check if biggest is the biggest number. Okay, so one thing we can do just to check, you'll see that the value of biggest is changing in the loop. So every time we go in here, so you'll see here. So let's do console. Let's do console.log. So you'll see how biggest is changing. So if we loop, now run this, you'll see initially biggest is 56 because big 56 is the biggest number. 81 is then it, if we loop through it, 81 is the next biggest number. 73 is never printed because it's not bigger than 81. 109 is printed. 51 won't be printed because it's smaller than 109. Okay, it keeps going. This one is not printed. This one is, all of these numbers are not printed because they're smaller than 109. And then we get to 501, that's printed. 23 is not printed because it's smaller than 501. 47 not printed. And then we get to 907. So that is not printed, or 907 is printed. And then at the end, obviously we print the highest number here. So just to show you that the biggest number only change when the current biggest number is bigger than the previous number. Okay, so if I execute the code, we go here. So to recap then, you need a loop, conditional statement, and control variable. You declare the variable to hold the biggest number outside of the loop, initialize it to 0, loop through the list, get each entry, check if the current list entry is bigger than the control variable. If so, store the current entry in the control variable, and if so, that's that. Keep on doing this for each iteration. And then at the end, you're going to have the biggest number. So hopefully that's useful. So this algorithm, we can also use finding the smallest number. So if you were to do that, you would have to, so let's see. So do the 4. So we can actually just use this one. So if we go here, so if we do something here for find smallest, So if you go here, find smallest, okay. So then we can change this one to smallest. Okay, and then we can, you see now I need to change this one here to Control V, Control V. And then what I want to do, if score, okay, is less than smallest, then we want smallest to score. Okay, so if, then we return smallest. Okay, so let's try that. So Control C, so Control V, so smallest, okay, smallest number. So let's see. Okay, oh, smallest number is not defined. What did I call my function? Find smallest, find smallest, find smallest, find smallest. Okay, execute that. Oh, okay, so there's a bit of an issue. Okay, so here we've defined the smallest. So I'll just run that. It says it's 0. According to me, the smallest number should be 51 or 23, in fact. So the thing here is what we have is we start with the smallest number being 0. So no number in this list is smaller than 0. So what we need to do when we do this, we just need to instantiate smallest to a number that's actually in the list. What I'm going to do here, I'm instantiating smallest to the first number in the list, which in this case will be 56. So if I execute the code now, okay, so now it's finding 23, okay? So if I add another small number here, which is 3, let's see, okay, it finds 3. If I add another small number here, I make it 1, make 5 here, we run, okay? Oh, unexpected number. Where is that happening? 507, unexpected number. Where is this now? Control Z, Control Z. What is happening here? 3. If I add 1, what is it doing? Okay, that worked now. Why didn't it work before? I think if there's a space before it. Okay, no. Something wasn't right there. But you can see that I can do a similar thing for smallest. So again, loop over, check if the current number is smallest than the current number. And then what it does, the only different thing we need to do is to make sure that I have a small number. So I just made sure that I'm grabbing the first number in the list. And then after that, it will always check for any number that's smaller than the first number and then override that. Otherwise, the smallest number is 0 and there's no number smaller than 0. So using this technique, you can find the biggest and the smallest number in a list. You can also do this to find other things in the list potentially. Is there some other condition finding, find the ones in a list that match a certain condition, but to find smallest and biggest using just a greater than or less than sign. So yes, this is like a foundational algorithm that you can use, and we'll later use it even when we are using maps. Then your control variable becomes a little bit more complex, but we'll look into that further. Thank you.